Welcome back to my Colorado Mountain Garden and Homestead. And today is Friday, May 16th. And the tomato plant you're seeing in front of you is a black Krim. And I started these seeds in paper towel on April 12th. Now, this plant, if it was warm enough out, I could have just put in my garden or even put in my 5-gallon container in my greenhouse. But I don't heat my greenhouses. I consider myself at best a zone 4A, but I would say I'm closer just because I face east-west to a 3B as far as coldness and last date of frost and everything like that. So most of my tomato plants will not go into the greenhouses, and this is also for peppers, into my greenhouse until at least the last week of May, and that's just if the weather's going to be okay. If we're still seeing some cooler temps, it's probably going to be the first or second week of June. I just have to watch the weather models, and yes, Colorado weather, the weather people aren't so good, and we never know, but I don't like to heat my big greenhouse if I don't have to. I will put a heater out there, but it's only gets turned on after I move plants out there, and I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to keep them warm enough. So as this plant sits, when I up potted it, I was about an inch above where the bottom is. Let me tilt this up a little bit. So whoops. And we'll just, the light, it's kind of cloudy today, so the light in here is not as good. But so it was about an inch above the top of the first little hole here. The plant in height with the pot at the highest area, which is right about here of the plant, is 10 inches. I can get my lights up on my grow shelves it ends up being about 12 inches because I have to keep them above the leaves far enough. So this is going to go into my big grow tent. And the reason why I want to mention this to everybody is that these seeds were started on the 12th. So they're just a little over a month old, and they could go into the garden. If you don't have a big set of grow lights like I do or a grow tent, you might even want to start your tomatoes a little bit later because they do grow very quickly. And soon I'll show you the tomatillos that were started a couple weeks later, and they're already getting really tall. They're still spindly as far as their stems go because they're still at that beginning stage, but they're getting pretty tall. And I actually put them in larger containers than a solo cup when I transplanted them from the cell. And that was just so I could drop them way down in and give them some room and hopefully keep them in check. But we'll come back and see that another day. I'm going to go ahead and scroll in here because there's one thing I want to show you. Hopefully if I can. So we're going to scroll in. You see the stem. So all of those little hairs that you're seeing there are basically can turn into roots. Now, inside this pot, I still can add 2 more inches of soil. So as this plant gets taller, I will fill in with the soil. And the reason why I drop my plants in, even from seed cells into solo cups, and then solo cups into the 1-gallon cups, is for root development and to get those stems nice and healthy and thick, so you're not putting a plant outside that's really spindly and can fall over and things like that. So I'm going to try, if I can, the best way I can here. All right, so I'm putting a pencil in here. So the yellow is the pencil. So it's not quite as wide as a pencil, but it's pretty darn close. Especially if, let's see if I can move this down here, more towards the bottom there. And that you can see that this little nub right there, that's the leaf. I actually took those leaves off today before I stuck it in the pot. And so you can see right down there, it's pretty much the size of a pencil. When these go into, let's bring this back in here so we can talk a little bit more. When they go into my grow tent, the lights will be down pretty low, like, about 2 to 3 inches. So this is going to keep growing up, just like if you think about when you're when you have them in your seed cells, if you don't have lights and let's say you're growing them in front of a window or something like that, how they get spindly. So it's going to grow up, and most likely, when you use the pencil as my pointer, I will have to take this leaf off. It just depends on how it grows. It may pop up and this leaf can stay on, but I will backfill with soil. I don't take it all the way up to where that leaf is because I want to give it time. There's probably a good 2.5 to 3 inches on the stem that was in the cup below the soil already. So I want to give time for those roots to develop. Now, once I put any of my plants in like this size of a pot, if there's something like a tomato or a pepper, that's when I start calculating my days to maturity. So for the Krim, it's 80 days. Usually doesn't take that long to get my first ripe tomato, but it's all dependent on weather. And you're not doing yourself a favor pushing these plants out before they're ready. I mean, you put them out, harden them off. Once they get bigger, I mean, especially if they're this dark and green, you don't necessarily have to harden them off like a little sprout or something like that. One good day under either a cloudy day if it's nice out, or even with some shade cloth across the top. So let's say I went ahead and put this in my garden today, if it was warm enough, which it's not, and it was like this. I would put shade if it wasn't cloudy, which it is today. But if it wasn't cloudy, I'd probably leave it under a 50% shade cloth for a couple days. And then I can kind of remove that. Now, my greenhouse has some UV protection on the their plastic panels, plastic greenhouse panels. But I also put up shade cloth in there just so that it doesn't get too hot. So, in theory, I could have planted these if it was warm enough. So I'm just trying to let you guys know, if you're starting plants, if you can't handle the big plants, because this probably by next week, let me scroll out here even more. Probably by next week, it'll be here or even higher. By then, I'll probably have added some more soil. And considering I still could have at least a month before this goes outside, because that would be June 16th, you can see how it's beneficial to be able to handle something like this, or handle it that tall. And again, these are all of my Krims will be going into 5-gallon containers. I don't have any problems going into 5-gallon containers. If you want to use a 10-gallon container, by all means. I wouldn't use anything smaller than a 5-gallon. Or if you have raised beds, your raised beds, you want at least about 18 inches deep for tomatoes. They would do better with about 2 feet. But if you don't have 2 feet, That's fine. They will survive, but just so you know, you're going to need to keep that soil up. This is an indeterminate variety. It's going to have tomato cages, and I put a bamboo stake, and this is just an example. The bamboo stake goes behind it, and that between the time it's at the bottom, it's a 6-foot bamboo stake. So from the bottom of my 5-gallon container all the way up, I put that right next to it, and that's just to give it something to hold on to. And then I have these plastic tomato cages that are basically a triangle. And then in that triangle, I can set the rungs that go this way, so that go horizontally at different levels. Now, I will keep my tomato plants, we'll imagine that this is a 5-gallon bucket. I will keep the leaves cut up. You can't really, let me aim it up. Probably about the first 6 to 8 inches above where the soil level is, if this pot was full, so that I get airflow underneath. It also helps keep the bugs down. It's just experience. If you're a new gardener, don't fret if you haven't heard this or don't understand. Ask me questions. Again, I put my Facebook page, my public Facebook page below so that you can message me. And I don't have a problem calling long distance if you're not in Colorado. Maybe you are in a real zone 3 area and it's your first time growing these tomato plants. I just am happy to share any information that I can. But, typing, I'm just going to tell you, a lot of people misinterpret things as you type them. So that's why I like to talk to people so I can kind of but hear what they're telling me. And I'm an open book. I do this purely because I think people should grow gardens and know how. I encourage young people to learn how to garden and grow things on their own, because Lord knows where we're going to be in 25 years. I may not even be on this earth. So, but you might, especially if you're 40 even, and it's just one of those things that I can give back as I learn things or have learned things through trial and error and what works best for me. That's all I can say. That's why I do it. I don't do it for any other reason. I get no money from it. I just hope people enjoy the videos. If you do, subscribe. While you're watching the video, hit that like button. It's a thumbs up, by the way. And that just lets me know that I'm at least getting to one other person or 2 other people on how I do this. And you can grow in the mountains. You don't have to have a greenhouse. I used to grow all of these on my deck. I used to live at 9,800 feet. I did not have a greenhouse. I grew them on my deck. I still had to protect them from deer and things like that with some sort of fencing or mesh or whatever I did. But that's been over 20 years that I was at that altitude. I am now in Bailey, Colorado, and I'm at 8,800 feet. I hope you're having a wonderful day. And remember, if you like the video, just click the thumbs up. Happy gardening.